Look, don't judge me. We've all got a thing, right? Some people like train spotting, some people like stamp collecting, some people like bird watching, not me. But I tell you right now, my thing, other than NAS, is SIM routers. These are devices that blur the lines between having a router that connects with a wired internet service provider into your home or business environment, but instead they utilize cellular data connections via 1 or 2 SIM cards like this one. Now this is the Dream Router 5G Max. This latest release from UniFi into their expanding Dream Router setup there and gateway setups allows you to not only take advantage of wired WAN services from an internet service provider, but have 2 SIM cards inside here, whether that is for failover or as a primary means of internet entering your home or business environment. There's a huge appeal to this. Most people think that a SIM router, by its definition, is just a mobile device. It's a mobile router that you carry around with you. And although there is utility in that, there are big advantages. Maybe you're living in a mobile home, an RV or whatever. Maybe you're in a houseboat. Maybe you've got different startups that you travel all between, or that you're temporarily in multiple locations as your business grows. Regardless, and I speak for myself when I say this, relying a business around SIM routers has become very, very attractive, and thanks to 5G internet connections increasing in coverage, but also increasing in performance, it has meant that a lot of users can cable cut the hell away from traditional internet service providers that have got long contracts of 1 to 2 years and instead switch towards simple, unlimited data 30-day SIMs. Now in that environment, this device interests the hell out of me. But we've got to address the elephant in the room. This thing's $499, which for some is billy bonkers for a device that, if you sign up with an internet service provider, they chuck a router in for free. Well, free with your contract. Now, the other elephant in the room, a lot of elephants in this room, it's like a ruddy zoo these days. It is that there is already a Dream Router 7. It doesn't have a SIM card slot, but the Dream Router 7 is $279. That is a price difference there of well over 220 nicker. What exactly is this bringing to the fold when on paper it seems to be just the Dream Router 7 with a couple of SIM card slots on it? When I say this and the Dream Router 7 are similar, I chuffing mean it. Both supporting up to 30 active devices and over 300 active users. Both of them arriving with 4 2.5 gigabit network ports and a 10 gig port there on the bottom with multiple WAN connections active at any given time for failover. Alongside that, one of those 2.5 gig ports is PoE, delivering 15.4 watts, and the whole system has around 34 watts maximum power utilization. Both arriving with support of the same UniFi software, obviously slightly tweaked and tailored to the different hardware architecture. They're both tri-band as well, 2.4, 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz support at 2x2 each. So 5.7 gigabit, 4.3 gigabit and 688 megabit coverage there with support of Wi-Fi 7 MLO. We'll circle back round to that later. Both of them providing not only support of that software for network management and gateway management, but also the Protect software with surveillance alongside a 64 gig WD Purple SSD inside. They both arrive with a quad core CPU, that A53 ARM processor there at 1.5 gigahertz and 3 gig of RAM. But this device at 300 grams heavier and around 60 millimeters taller, there's more gubbins inside here, and a lot of that is to do with the additional coverage required for those nano SIMs. Now, it isn't just the SIMs there obviously taking up all of this space, but they've certainly had to reprofile the cooling throughout the system because, remember, SIM card slots there are just the start of it. These need their own antennae in order to communicate with those cellular services there. Having 2 of them as well is a nice touch for users that want to include a simple SIM for either out-of-bounds management of the device, for secure access remotely and taking advantage of some of the NAT security benefits of cellular, But on top of that, just simply having the option of failover in general. Having that there, whether you're going to use it as a primary, a secondary, or even a tertiary failover, because remember 2 slots, is going to be advantageous. Also, the Max has a better front-mounted LCD. Not only is there more information, because the Dream Router 7, as much as I liked that LCD giving me real-time information, it wasn't touchscreen and it was flipping tiny. This is massive with real analytical information, and it is indeed touchscreen as well. So you don't need to log in via the app to get real-time information about the health of your connections. Also, circling back around to that subject of MLO, this is Wi-Fi 7 and it has MLO support included. That is when you aggregate multiple connections across the multiple bands there at 6 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, and take advantage, by the way, of the extra 320 megahertz channels there. But do keep in mind that right now most client devices aren't able to take advantage of true MLO right now. They're able to take advantage of what is effectively load balancing across those individual connections rather than aggregating them together. And a lot of that is to do with client devices not having the oomph, not having the integrated cooling systems, and just generally the power draw needed for that kind of technology on the client side, the laptops, the devices, the more. That's why, and we talked about this in March, devices like this one. This here, the AirWire from UniFi, allows you via a USB connection to just connect this to your device and therefore take advantage of true MLO with the aggregated connections. Now, the level of support against different devices from UniFi is yet to be seen. I know they are slowly but surely going to start integrating it, because a lot of it was about the software on these devices having it turned on, and they just didn't turn it on if there wasn't the client support. Now they're integrating client devices here. I can imagine they'll start enabling it little by little, not just on the more egregious, more aggressive APs and like the Pro XG and the like. The other cool thing is just how easy it is to add an eSIM. If you, wherever you are in the world, whether you're going to use your own cellular connection or you need one just on the fly temporarily, you can easily pick up eSIMs super cheap. And then from there you can add these to the system to act as a temporary failover when you need them. It's really straightforward to do, and after you've done that, you've got those extra layers of failover, load balancing, or if you're in an area where the cellular coverage with one provider is poor, you can switch over to another one where it will be pretty good, and then from that just get yourself that temporary day coverage. Again, regions will vary and the amount of coverage and the amount of data included will vary, but this is a SIM I got for the UK for just 59 pence, and that gave me 500 meg of data, which again, in an emergency situation for access, is going to be invaluable to just have that running in the background and activate when you need. Also, and although this doesn't differentiate it from the Dream Router 7, we do also have to talk about the fact that this device with that UniFi network operating system also provides VoIP services there, connecting services, the surveillance one that we talked about before. You're not just buying a router on just a dumb gateway. Let's talk about that software. Let's talk about the UniFi options on this. You may be unfamiliar with it. And again, we've talked about these routers and the UniFi network management and gateway management on many videos, but we should at least talk about how it runs on this and if there is any standout elements to it. Next up, let's talk power consumption, let's talk noise, and let's talk thermals. Let's start with thermals. We've got predator mode enabled. On the top left, we've got low use. On the top right, we've got high use. Let's start with the low use. After 24 hours, with just a WAN cable connected on the top left, as you can see there, but with a few different Wi-Fi clients dodging in and out of the system, we saw around 46 to 48 degrees around the top of the system where that cooling rig is in place. The port, such as it was pretty low temp there, with the LCD panel probably being the most surprising at around 42 to 44 degrees, but obviously behind that is where a lot of the gubbins of this system are in operation, and also that was without a camera in utilisation. However, 24 hours of use with all the cables connected and a SIM card in place being accessed, and with load balancing in place when needed and a PoE camera, we saw around 51 degrees around the top of the system, peaking around the vents around 53 degrees. The port sat around 41 to 43 degrees with the SFP connected to a NAS at 45 degrees and around 48 degrees around the edges there. So again, slightly higher than your average router, but again, this isn't your ISP router, more on that in a moment. This is a premium grade system built more like a mini server. And how does that translate in terms of noise? Well, with the system in idle mode with the fan set to automatic, and by idle, by the way, there was light pinging from around 4 Wi-Fi devices. We saw, again, with a connected cable as well, around 39 to 41 dBA. We will play these in isolation in a moment, but again, that's kind of pretty normal for a system that has a fan-assisted internal component. But what about with high noise? What about when the fans are guns blazing? Well, luckily, the LCD panel does allow us to test that. So I went ahead and using the LCD panel set the fans to maximum noise. That was the fan set to maximum, and also afterwards I kind of alternated the fans going up and down to give you a slight sense of perspective. But when they were in maximum, it was around 44 to 45 dBA. So let's hear those in isolation. Finally, power consumption. As mentioned repeatedly, this is not your internet service provider router. This is like a mini server, and unfortunately for some, the power consumption is going to be reflective of that, so do keep that in mind. Now, with low power use, so that's the CPU, by the way, I'm referring to in low power because the RAM was in pretty high use because of the apps and services I was running. So the CPU at mid-range percentage use, 3 RJ45 connections, 3 Wi-Fi connections, but no PoE camera connected, more on that in a moment. I saw around 15.6 to 15.8 watts. Now, how did that translate when we went to heavier use? Well, with the CPU exceeding 50% utilization consistently and a PoE camera attached, as well as all of the connections and services from before, the PoE draw through the system increased that power consumption to 26 to 27 watts. So again, noticeable but understandable with a PoE dome camera attached. Now, what about if I try to ramp up the CPU? I went ahead and ramped up the CPU by increasing some of the services with the Protect software. So a lot of that was facial recognition, zone boundary, smart area of effect, and enabling load balancing across a WAN connection and a SIM card there. It was actually largely the same, give or take a watt or two, compared with the CPU at half utilization. So thanks to it being an ARM-based processor, ramping up that CPU isn't going to make a huge amount of difference. And probably when the CPU's sitting around 15 to 20% or even lower, you're probably going to see utilization of around 11 to 12 watts. Now, I've covered this software a lot over the last few weeks and months, and it's just generally, it's one of the best ways to manage a network for those that just want to be able to see everything in real time. Again, when you do set up the device, obviously your topography is going to be pretty limited there, and what you see is going to branch out, gradually over time. But to put that into perspective, here is the Dream Router 7 running here, and this is after a lot of apps, a lot of services, and a lot of clients, and this is the ability to overview what you're seeing and doing here. I know it's going to be very familiar to UniFi users, but for the rest of users that are looking at this platform for the first time, stuff like this, you're just not aware of just how comprehensive it is from what you can break down into the clients, what you can do, and just the management of the apps and services and control. Now, heading back into the Dream Router 5G Max, again, you're going to see a lot of red here. This is nothing to do with the device. It's just I do have a follow-up video coming where I'm going to try and add as many failovers as possible. So the green is my active internet connection, but when we head a little deeper into the system, but I'm currently trying to test out adding as many failovers as possible. Not only that, but also taking advantage of load balancing. So there will be a follow-up video where I talk about a lot more about the capabilities of this system and the multi-layers of connection, as well as adding those individual SIM cards as well on the fly when you need them. But it just means you're going to see a bit more red in this video that I would ideally like to show you. But managing the network, easy. Managing the client devices, managing different UniFi devices within this single device, really easy. adding individual client devices, managing each of the individual ports. All of it is really, really straightforward and presented in a single pane of glass utilization. And then once you start factoring in other UniFi devices and taking advantage, for example, of things like UniFi Protect with its multiple apps and services that are all built in and included, adding cameras on the fly, both UniFi's own and adding OnViv, whether you want to add access devices, adding VoIP devices. That said, unlike the single pane of glass interface of a lot of the information and secondary and tertiary layers of the UniFi network software, I will say when it comes to management, they have kind of gone their own road with the user experience there, and it's slightly different to some platforms out there. It's still good, but if you've never used a UniFi device before, it can be complicated. The first layer is the one there on the left, which details pretty much the top layer down to the logs and the integration and setting up alarms. Then you have the secondary layer, which is here where you manage individual connections, and this is what I would consider to be the real nuts and bolts of it. But then when you want to manage the hardware, you've got to go into a third layer, which is the control plane, and the control plane breaks out into an update window, but then from there you've got managing the backups of the software, managing the storage of that SD card, and then managing the control console configuration. I kind of wish this was directly accessible here on the main interface, but I get it. This is UniFi's own UX, and it's the way they run their railroad. Managing the LEDs, again, you've got this whole nighttime LED thing, but you don't have any kind of air gapping where you can set the device to turn on and off over time. And even remotely being able to set perhaps a scheduled on and off when you're on vocation if you do want to completely isolate your network from the router. Again, it's a little thing, but it's something I've seen elsewhere and maybe something they could integrate. From there, you've obviously got the ability to manage and look at the CPU, the memory, and what exactly is going on in the system. But a lot of that, you can use the front-mounted LCD panel to get the job done. Managing the overall networks, managing the Wi-Fi, managing the internet services is already available there and manageable on the fly, adding new SSIDs if you choose, and creating guest Wi-Fis and assigning different bands to those different network Wi-Fi connections. Keep in mind, no matter where you are in the world, the level of access to the 6 GHz spectrum is going to be slightly different. So in the UK, for example, a lot of that is barred. And although you can go into the system settings and say, for example, to click options to say professional installer or changing some of the regional information to open up those bands, I wouldn't recommend you do that unless you know what you are doing. And again, you can set up localized access, parental control and more pretty easily, although sometimes not as straightforward as you might like, in different areas of the system, as well as adding individual VPNs or using UniFi's own teleport system to tap in remotely, which again in some cases will make up for not having that scheduled on or off and air gapping. And you can use things like the travel routes to get in easily. And then you've got content filtering, some of that parental control stuff we mentioned earlier on, as well as if you want to set up multiple routers for high availability. And that can also extend to management of multiple switches as well. It's all there. And if you do want to make sure access is pretty secure, you've got things like Identity Endpoint, which you can run on client devices to ensure an extra layer of access, an extra layer of security from those accessing your device remotely. It's still a great software platform, and it's available on the majority of gateway devices from UniFi. There isn't too much that separates it in the case of the 5G Max compared with other devices, with the exception of the SIM card coverage, of course, but it's still a fantastic platform, and I would argue in many cases is worth the price of admission in the majority of UniFi devices. Now, as a router, we can't really make a full judgment on this until it's really done its time. We did as much with the Dream Router 7. We set that up. I say we, I did. I set it up for a year just to see how it would run and give you a true representation about it. At least for this video and the testing that I have done, I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing here. It managed the multiple connections going in and that WAN balance across the either direct cabled in network service, internet services, or utilising the cellular services via those SIM card slots left me really, really pleased. But time will tell whether this device will really live up to its quite hefty promises and hefty price tag. I would say if you're looking for a Wi-Fi 7 router and you're looking for a SIM card slot as either as a failover or as a primary internet connection there, and you're looking to run a PoE switch, run a PoE camera alongside it, maybe a mobile home as mentioned earlier on, There are a lot of worse options in the market right now, and although this does come out on a high price tag compared to an internet service provider router or a bog standard non-cellular internet router, I will say for what you are getting for that price, it actually makes a lot more sense. But this is going to be one arguably for the avid UniFi fans more than the traditional non-UniFi user. I love it, but I'm not sure everyone will. We'll talk about this more in a few months when we put this thing through its paces over a given period of time, just to see how well it delivers, as well as look at the updates over time. So I recommend you check that out. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do want to get a hold of one of these, there is a link in the description. Taking advantage of that link results in a small commission coming here to NAS Compares, and it allows me and Eddie to keep doing what we do, and it allows you to passively support creators at no additional cost. But only use that link if you do want to get hold of this device. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.